Coming to you from the inner sanctum of the Big Blue House in the middle of nowhere, this is Paranormal Adventures with your host Sean.
Crystal, and Dealy Dog. We're kind of starting all over again. We had some little incidences and different things, but we're going to try to get this going right this time. We're going to be talking to y'all. This is the second episode in the Witch Trials, and we had been watching on Hulu Witches, The Truth Behind the Trials. Like I said, that's on Hulu. And so we were going to talk to y'all a little bit about that. I'll go ahead and give you a little background because this was during King James. It was his time that he was ruling Scotland that all this happened, which we'll get into dates and historical things as we go on.
You know what I realized?
Yeah.
We talked about, made mention of it last time, that the Salem witch trials only lasted a year.
Yeah.
You know what's crazy? The North Berwick witch trials
Yeah.
dealing with King James, you know how long they lasted? 1590 to 1591.
Yeah.
A
So,
year.
and that might be because of everything that I'm going to mention about his background. Um, So his mother was Mary, Queen of Scots. She is pretty famous throughout history. In fact, her own cousin put her to death, and I don't think that was Elizabeth, but I'm not for sure because there was her sister ruled for a little while before Elizabeth did. Elizabeth was Henry VIII's daughter, and she was also the daughter of Anne Boleyn, famously beheaded. um, but anyway, her
Who's
cousin.
that?
You don't know who Anne Boleyn is?
No.
She was the second wife of Henry VIII. She was the reason that he and Catherine got divorced. They had Elizabeth together. So, Elizabeth does eventually become queen. We all know her story. She was never married or had a suitor that she wanted to marry to become king, and never had any children or what they called issue. So James was the son of Mary, the Queen of Scots, hence they're cousins and related. So he is eligible and able to succeed to the throne if he gets a wife and heirs. Then there's a good possibility he will go on to be King of England, which he does. He does transition to king eventually. But he knows there's some certain things he needs to do. So during this time, they bring a picture of the Princess of Denmark, who he's just like, ooh, I want to marry her, basically. And she was 14. There was an age difference, but back in those days, this is like 1590, so they did that then. So she tries to come over with her courtiers, whatever you call them, entourage. They try to make it from Denmark to Scotland. Every time they try to make the voyage, the weather and the rough seas make them turn around and go back to Denmark. So finally, King James says, enough's enough, I'm going to go get her. So he proceeds with his entourage to go get her. Well, he ends up spending the winter in Denmark. Well, I'll let him go ahead and mention what he wanted to about King James and the Bible, and then we'll go on with how the witch trials
What did
start.
I want to mention?
That he wrote the King James version of the Bible.
He had the King James Version translated.
Okay.
It was the first English translation of the Bible.
Okay.
And he's the one that had it translated. So he had that kind of
Yeah.
that religious
Yeah.
kind of mindset.
So there was a nobleman who had a servant girl, and this is where everything kind of starts and takes off. She was very knowledgeable about mixing concoctions, and we've talked about this before, that a lot of women were accused because they had knowledge of herbal plants and home remedies and things like that. Well, she became known for this, and people would come to her for some of her remedies and concoctions that she would come up with. But she was just very knowledgeable with plants and their medicinal uses. So he accuses her of being a witch. She's one of the first, along with some other women we'll talk about. I'll have to look at her last name when I pull some of that up, but her first name was Agnes. She's also one that got accused. Um, and basically, it starts with that, and they start interrogating these couple women that they first bring in, and they basically get King James on board by doing this. So this is what happens. They say that the reason why King James has had so much trouble getting his bride and bringing her to Scotland was due to the witches, and that there was a coven right there in Scotland, right there near them, and that it was this group of women that was causing all the issues as far as him trying to get his bride over. So that's how they basically get him on board and get him convinced with everything. And then some other things happen that get him convinced, because they obviously start torturing these women into false confessions and bringing them. They actually brought Agnes before King James, and she ends up telling him this story, and he believes her because supposedly she tells him what he said to his bride on their wedding night. And so that just fuels the fire even more. So I can pull this up and start reading it. Do you have anything that you want to say from watching it too about that?
Not off the
Not
top
at
of
the
my head.
moment?
No.
So you want me to just go ahead and read some of this then?
You go ahead and talk about it.
Okay, I will.
This is more your episode, so I'm letting you kind of take
Okay,
it over.
alright. Well, I watched it twice so that I could have all that fresh on
I watched
my
it
mind.
once and fell asleep.
Yeah, that's what happens with the research, all. So anyway, and you'll have to excuse me. I'm pretty tired and a little bit irritable tonight. My back is hurting
I'm
really
tired
bad.
too.
Yeah. Well, you had your little happenings at work today
I
that.
burnt my nuts. I have oven roasted nuts.
Oh, good grief! I didn't think you were going to tell him that you
I
did
don't
that
care.
at work. Yeah, so he did that this morning at work and had to come home and sit on an ice pack. So he's got the welding stick that you use at work with the trailers, and your lead slipped and fell somewhere that it shouldn't have.
And the hot rod hit me against the nuts.
Thank goodness you had the chaps on.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. Because it
Yeah.
would have been worse if you hadn't had your chaps on. Anyway.
That's why I'm kind of quiet tonight.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of feeling it.
Yeah, and it's we got a little rain earlier today. Supposed to get more tonight, which rain is a good thing. I'm glad we're getting it, but I'm definitely feeling it tonight with my back. So if I'm not as smiling as big tonight. So okay, it says during the late 16th century under King James VI, the North Berwick witch trials were from, like he was saying, they were a year. They were from 1590. Actually, it says on here 1590 to 1592, so that's actually 2 years.
Huh.
So, and it said that was a significant event that commented his involvement in combating witchcraft, which he saw as treasonous and connected to the conspiracy against him. Again, that's what his council was saying. They were convincing him that not only were they, interfering with his bride coming over, but they were treasonous against him, and they were plotting his death.
You see a lot of these shows that, I guess, like the TV shows and stuff that kind of showed like the witches being burned at the stake and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Being burned at the stake did not happen in the United States, the colony.
Yeah.
At the time, it wasn't the United States; it was the British colonies that were over here. That didn't happen over here, but under the rule of King James, they were burned at the stake. But
Most of them were killed beforehand, and then
I'm getting to that. They were. I think there was only a couple that were burned alive.
there was one
One that was
because
burned
he was
alive.
basically ticked off.
Yeah, she pissed him off, and he's like, "I'm not
Yeah.
even killing you before I kill you."
Yeah. Well, it was basically because another woman got off and she was released, and
Yeah.
that really ticked him off because she was pregnant, or they said that she was pregnant, and they released her and found her not guilty of anything. And so she was released to go and live her life, and he was pissed off. So the next woman that they brought up for the trials, he had her burned alive. That's how horrible he was.
The rest of them, they had. This is gonna sound bad, but luckily they were strangled to death before
Yeah.
they were burned.
Yeah.
That's still horrible, but
Well,
you know.
yeah. Okay, so let me see where I left off and we'll go from there because I was saying, okay. Um so his personal influence by a storm on his return from Denmark, which is what I was telling y'all, and the confession of healer. So she was a healer, and we've talked about that, how some people have that within their families. It's just an ability. They might be a healer, maybe even an empath. But so she was a healer, and her name was Agnes Sampson. And under torture, this led to the persecution of over 70 people. And with many executions, James' obsession, so he almost did become like obsessed with this. It culminated in his let's see, it says treatise Daemonology 1597. It's got a date by it. I'm not sure exactly what that is. But it says, and that promoted the idea of a demonic pact and helped fuel further witch hunts in Scotland. So it says, and this was in North Berwick, Scotland. And these witch trials were from 1590 to 1592. And I'm going to go over some of the points on this, which basically, this is the trigger. King James' return from Denmark was accompanied by a severe storm, which he and others suspected was caused by witchcraft. Again, the men in his court further fueled this by giving him that idea. So the accused, over 70 people were accused, including Agnes Sampson, a local healer who confessed under torture to demonic pacts and spells against the king. They basically tortured her until she confessed to all kinds of things, including conspiracies against the king. The outcome of this was many were tortured to extract confessions and sentenced to death, often strangled and then burned. Demonology and the broader context. It says purpose of the book. So King James wrote this. That's basically what this is. In 1597, King James published Demonology, a treatise on witchcraft that became a significant influence on witch hunting practices. Solidifying his fascination with the supernatural. So apparently King James was into the supernatural, but he was just bad. He was like mean to people.
Hey, I've said it before though. Him having the religious mindset that he had, but uh, you know, with that said, what's the most supernatural book in the world?
Yeah, the
The
Bible.
Bible. So, you know, of course he's going to be kind of into the supernatural stuff.
Okay, and then there's political motivation, and I told y'all about that too. He was determined to become king of England. He was determined that that was what he was going to do. He was going to move up, and when Elizabeth died, he was going to be king, which he ultimately does. Um, but it says the trials were partly political as James saw the accused witches as a threat to his divine and secular authority and used them to consolidate his power. Widespread fear. The North Berwick trials, amplified by publications like News from Scotland, stoked public fear and belief in witches as powerful, invisible enemies. There was a legacy, it says, although Scotland's Witchcraft Act existed before James, his reign accelerated the scale and intensity of witch hunts, establishing a precedent for a more obsessive approach to persecuting witches. Let's see. I'm gonna let you talk for a minute where I can pull up some more stuff on this.
I learned something about King James though. He was only
Mm.
13 months old when he took the throne
Wow.
of Scotland. So that was kind of interesting.
Okay, I'm gonna pull up some of this.
What website you going to?
This one is Mercat Tours.
Okay.
It says the crime of witchcraft in King James VI Edinburgh history. We often think of witch trials as long ago paranoia belonging to a different world or relegated to fiction. Even the popular series Outlander, set in the 18th century, dips into the stories of the Scottish witch trials. But the history of witch trials in Scotland might be longer and more recent than you think. It spans centuries, and though it began before he was born, King James VI played an important role. Keep the dates in mind when you hear grisly stories of witches and witchcraft. Scotland's Witchcraft Act, which made sorcery a capital crime, was passed in 1563. The late person to be burned as a witch in Scotland was Janet Horne. She was executed in 1727. That's during the Georgian era, a period well known for authors like Daniel Defoe and painters like Thomas Gainsborough. Scotland's last witch, Helen Duncan, was sentenced to prison during World War II in 1944. That's crazy. She was arrested and prosecuted under the Witchcraft Act of 1735, which was supposed to end witch trials as we knew them, but ultimately provided further loopholes for persecution. Popular belief in magic and witchcraft dates back much further, of course, back to prehistory, but it was from the mid 1500s, comparatively recent times, that witch mania gripped Europe and witch burning suddenly went through the roof. And then it says, was King James VI a victim of witchcraft?
No.
It says there are all sorts of reasons why witch trials increased during the early modern period. Religious upheavals, political unrest, economic hardship, crop failures. Tense, frightened people tend to look for scapegoats. In Scotland, the interest shown in witch hunting by King James VI in the 1590s accelerated things further. James, who you might know better for having commissioned the King James Bible, believed he was the victim of witchcraft. He was convinced a coven of witches in North Berwick had raised storms at sea in an attempt to sink his ship and drown him. The king took a personal interest in the interrogations that followed. He even published a book about witch hunting called Demonology. Let's see, Gillis Duncan, more than a book character. You might recognize the name Gillis Duncan if you're familiar with these series. It says Outlander. In the fictional series, Gillies is accused of witchcraft and turns into something of a villain. But Gillies Duncan is not only a fictional character. Author Diana Gabaldon used the name of a very real woman, the first accused at the beginning of North Berwick witch trials. That's the one I was telling y'all about. She was the servant of a nobleman that had knowledge of herbs and different remedies. She was only a young adult, possibly still a teenager, when her employer accused her of practicing witchcraft. He took it upon himself to interrogate her. Listen to her real story below. It just shows like a little video. We're not going to do all that. Then it says, the devil at loose in the world. All attempts to eradicate witchcraft only made things worse. Those suspected of sorcery were frequently tortured, leading to dubious confessions and other innocent people being identified as witches. Those found guilty were strangled and burned in horrifying public spectacles, which further increased people's anxiety and paranoia about witchcraft. Soon, ordinary folk were seeing witches everywhere. The devil, it seemed, was at loose in the world. Christian society was under attack. Scotland's extraordinary witch mania went on for more than a century, with panics gripping the country in the 1590s, the 1620s, and 1640s, and again in the 1660s. By the early 18th century, however, things were starting to change. The country was becoming more peaceful and stable, and its educated elite increasingly skeptical about witchcraft. In 1735, Parliament finally passed an act repealing laws against witchcraft, and that marked the end of it, right?
Nope. It doesn't.
Let's see. Where did I leave off at? Okay. There we go. It was now impossible for those who still believed in witchcraft to pursue cases in court. However, this act made it a crime to claim to have or use magical powers, and this was a law used to arrest Helen Duncan in 1944. The act was finally fully repealed in 1951. Suddenly, witch trials don't feel quite so far away. What do you think about all that? I couldn't believe it. 1944.
There are actually, I looked up, the witch trials, and there are actually some that have still occurred, even up to I think this past year.
In like other countries.
In other countries.
Wow, that's crazy to me. But it was like that little thing started, and yeah, it started in that with that servant girl, because she had knowledge of different herbs and medicinal remedies, and people came to her. Her employer, a nobleman who was also in power and authority, accused her, and it kind of just spiraled from there. But were you gonna pull up some more?
I was kind of trying to remember where this was. I saw this. That it says witch trials occurred primarily in early modern Europe and its colonies, but also happen today in many parts of the world, including sub-Saharan Africa, India, and Papua New Guinea.
Papua New Guinea.
I like that word.
That's where you did the
The
dinosaurs.
dinosaurs. But it's one of them things that I was trying to find where.
Still some of the backward places that.
Well, third world countries
Yeah,
and stuff like
yeah,
that.
yeah. Oh, Dealey Dog's being a good girl.
I was trying to remember where they were at, but and this it's been a few days ago when I saw that.
Yeah.
Saw it.
Well, you can always look it up as we keep going because we do plan on making this a multi-part series. So.
Oh, I thought you were ending on this one.
No, no,
Oh.
we're gonna keep going. There's still more on that documentary, and there's some good ones to watch. I just haven't got that far into it yet, so I will be watching the next episode in the series, trying to get him to watch too when he's not so tired. Probably not putting it on tonight because you're pretty tired. But we're gonna keep going on with that documentary on Hulu. And if you guys want to, as we're doing these episodes, if y'all want to watch some of that on Hulu, it is Witches: The Truth Behind the Trials. So, and you can pull up that third episode is Scotland that talks about King James and all of that occurred. So, but we plan on going forward with this for a little bit.
Okay.
I mean, I plan to, don't you?
It's whatever you're planning on doing.
Okay. Because we'd even talked about this being a multi-part episode, so I figured we'd go on with some of this for a little bit. But is there one that you wanted to pull up or talk about with this? Are we calling it done for tonight?
Well, this is kind of a short one so far.
How long have we gone for?
Not even 30 minutes. It's 27.
Oh. Well, we can talk about some of the upcoming stuff if you want to, and giving a shout out to some of the people we know. We went to go get wood Saturday from a really nice couple, and we talked to her and her husband. They had some wood, some trees down, and had some wood, and they were giving it to us for free. We have a fireplace to use that, and her and her twin sister, they're identical twins. It's kind of neat, but they have a show. They're also here in Arkansas, and they're the Grounded Galactic Twins. So y'all go and check out their podcast.
I keep on it. I feel bad because I keep on and just call it Galactic Twins.
Yeah.
I keep forgetting the Grounded.
Yeah, so the Grounded Galactic Twins. Y'all check them out. They're really cool and have a really awesome podcast too. And then I don't know what Craig and Richard have done lately.
The last one they did was the Beast of Bray Road.
Yeah, so y'all check out them.
Then they're doing the next one that they have coming up is the Yeti of. He told me.
The Yeti of something. We're looking for it.
What mountain range is that?
The Himalayan?
Yes, Himalayans.
Okay. That's one thing I think of that was like, he's looking to see.
I was just making sure that was right.
And then I have quite a few episodes now up for the Pink Lady Speaks Her Mind, and that's more of a self-help and just talking about daily lives of us women and what we go through and our challenges and health and mental health and marriage, family, you name it, recipes, things like that. So and that goes along with my page, the Pink Ladies Club, and that's on Facebook.
Yeah, we're right. Yeti of the Himalayas.
Okay. So Richard and Craig with the Supernatural Roundtable.
That's found on YouTube.
Yes, found on YouTube. Their next episode will be the Yeti of the Himalayas. So check them out.
The the twins.
Yeah.
That I know that they hate being called, hey, the twins or whatever, but the twins,
Yeah.
the Grounded Galactic, they just released it, an episode today over Bigfoot.
Oh, so check them out.
So Bigfoot's cool.
And then he's been doing some new episodes of Me, Myself, and Flint,
This
which
guy.
is some of kind of what I do for the ladies, but he does kind of more for men and their challenges and things in daily life and things like that you guys go through. So.
Yeah, well, I'm crazy like that.
So. And Dealey's over here snoozing. I think she's tired tonight. I think it's just been kind of one of those tired kind of days for us. So.
Anyway.
But I hope y'all got some really good information on that. And like I said, that is episode 3 on that. So y'all can check out more and it'll go into more detail about the witch trials of Scotland.
Yep.
And we'll catch y'all next week
On
then.
the flip side.
Yeah, for another episode of the witch trials.
Alright. We'll talk to you later.
Good night.
Bye.